I want to be done with this fucking garbage. I'm so fucking tired with this shit. I have nothing to be doing here anymore. I have no aspirations. My days are just filled with finding ways to fill up my time and distract myself from how fundamentally fucking miserable I am. This is how I've been for, I don't know, my whole life in some respects, but yeah, it was a period of time where I tried to do what people would be call coping, I suppose, in the modern sort of parlance, right? Trying to delude myself into thinking that my utterly horrible situation was something that I myself had chosen for myself, and that I was... Fuck, I've been over this before. This whole thing of wanting to be alone and not needing people and making myself believe that myself, my own mind, my own interests were enough, that is all I needed, that's all I wanted out of life. Traveling around, writing shit in my fucking journal. Writing fictions of various sorts. So caught up in my own mind, my own imaginings, my own fantasies. And then at some point, those fantasies just all fell away. The sense of importance that I felt, self-importance, fell away. I was no longer interested in myself, my own mind, my own thoughts, the things that I could do by myself, the places I could go. It all just became more and more hollow, because I wasn't living in fantasy anymore. I was living in reality. And the reality is that man is a social animal. And it's fucking ironic as well. I was, like so many other people, utterly infatuated with this Into the Wild story, this Christopher McCandless character. And in my youthful naivete, I put him on some kind of pedestal as being, someone to model oneself after, not really, failing to grasp what the actual, moral of his story was, right? What he himself realized before he fucking starved to death. That we need other people. His way of putting it was, happiness is only real when shared. And, I kind of feel like he must have felt, perhaps, I don't know how I imagine he might have felt. I think he also wrote in his journal in his last few days that when he realized that he couldn't escape from the wilderness, when the gravity of the situation sunk in and he himself was no longer living in fantasy, he wrote something like, never felt so alone and afraid in my entire life. Yeah, I don't know about afraid, but I feel incredibly alone nowadays. Unlike before, unlike maybe a decade ago or so. I never felt lonely. But now I feel lonely pretty much all the time. There's nothing really distracts me from it. Nothing holds my attention really anymore. And I'm just filled with so much frustration and disappointment at my inability to rectify a situation as I was in my past. And so acute was the agony of such that it prompted me to assume this persona of being this individualist who didn't need people, was wholly self-reliant. And this all just adds to the other shit that I have to deal with existing. These other things, other problems that rather unfortunately would, I know, be so much less significant were I to not be so completely alone and to have really nothing of any real substance going on in my life. Because I've seen how before, when I have had things going on, when I've had this sense of there being some place to go, people to know, that I'm less bothered by these other problems. They're still, of course, present. I haven't escaped them, but what I have escaped is a large part of the suffering that is brought about by them. My throat hurts right now because I was just screaming in just utter despair and in a state of being completely overwhelmed by these environmental naggings. Things that most people don't have to deal with, not to this degree. They're so much more trivial, maybe a bit annoying, maybe a slight inconvenience, but not something that makes you feel like there's nowhere to run to, there's nowhere to hide. They just, it makes you collapse inward upon yourself in just utter despair. It's so hard to convey this to others. So hard to really fully articulate the gravity of this problem. It's a problem of the world as I found it, right? Being in this body, in this mind. It shouldn't be this bad, should it? Doesn't make any sense. External circumstances to anyone else seem pretty A-okay. So why am I reporting something so vastly contrary to such? My own subjective experience of such, why is it so different? Every day is just a struggle. Every day just being. Yeah, I will say this, okay? The experience, because what I'm talking about here really, to be more specific about it, is just the problem that comes with being autistic. And so what is it like, an average day as an autistic person? Well, it's, for myself anyway, the experience is like someone's constantly prodding you on the shoulder, prodding you, and then someone's playing like a little annoying little beeping sound or something, or like something really, really loud and you're right up against your ear, and then someone's trying to talk to you and you're trying to listen to what they're saying at the same time as all this other stuff is going on. And then someone else, starts, prodding you somewhere else. And then you're trying to read a book or something like this, or trying to concentrate on a video documentary, something like this, trying to educate yourself in some way, or trying to, get some, fulfillment or satisfaction out of life. You try going for a walk, and there's a stone in your shoe, and you can feel all of these things. All of these things are occurring simultaneously, and they're just sapping you, and you're trying to be like, oh, this doesn't bother me. I can I'm not gonna give in to this. Like, I'm just gonna maintain an even keel and be, very mindful and maintain this placid state. And a lot of the time, you can do that. You can pull that off. Leaves you very exhausted. Leaves you really, really burnt out and just thoroughly jaded with this experience of living. Not really looking forward to doing it again for the millionth time. Kind of doesn't make you want to wake up in the morning, but you can keep doing it, right? Until you can't. Until, I don't know, some more other problems get piled in. Life bullshit, drama, conflicts, emotional problems. These things seem to come in a cycle. For me, anyway, this has been the case, although apparently now it seems like it's just all the time. Sure, for most autistic people as well, you can add in like, just chronic loneliness, social isolation, not being able to work a job. Not that anyone would want to work a job anyway, but like, as an autistic person, you're basically physically and mentally unable to actually do so. You can't even force yourself to do it, because you will just shut down, right? Your body will just not comply. So poverty is another issue, right? If you can't work, right? So homelessness is another one. A lot of autistic people, despite the popular stereotype of autistic people being like these Spock-like asexual creatures, most autistic, well, not most, but there's a high amount of hypersexuality in autistic people, but also a lot of involuntary celibacy. You add all this stuff together, and and then you're gonna be beyond burned out. You're gonna end up having a meltdown, and it's incredibly humiliating for the person that has to go through that. Because basically everyone around you gaslights you into thinking that you're kind of just being I don't know, a diva of some kind, right? Your actions are disproportionate to the situation, and you're just being kind of a self-indulgent little toddler having a temper tantrum, which doesn't help at all either, right? Just lowers the self-esteem of the autistic person, and it just wears them down even more, makes them even more depressed, even more jaded on life, and until eventually they probably end up killing themselves. Because, by the way, that is the leading cause of death amongst autistic people, high-functioning autistic people at least, who don't have a comorbidity of epilepsy, which is quite common. And the rates of suicide are like 9 times higher than in the general population. So and it's very difficult, to make all of this even worse is the fact that it's impossible really to get any kind of help or understanding from people, because part of the issue with the condition is, a large part of it is rooted in related to the inability to communicate effectively socially, and so people aren't gonna understand what you're talking about. They're not going to be able to read you. They're not going to be able to read your emotions, because flat affect is very common, and It's pretty terrible. And this too is annoying now, is that this issue of mind blankness that I have. I feel like there's more that I need to say, more that I want to say, and yet there are no words forthcoming. I'm just sitting there, watching my mind's inability to produce anything, and that's all that's really occurring, at least in terms of language. But there are the feelings that I can't articulate, feelings that I can't affix any kind of syllogistic narrative to. It's fucking horrible.